So this is a talk that kind of evolved from a previous topic. I was just building something originally on courage, and I was in a situation, and we were talking about an agile retrospective, and people expressed the sentiment of well, we don't want to do that. We got to go in. We got to talk about our feelings and stuff, and that's terrible. We don't want to do that. And that really caught me. So that's how this talk came about. So a little bit about myself. I am an entrepreneur. I started a company called Mogility some odd 14 years ago. It started as a software consultancy, and a couple years back, I decided to divest that consultancy and pursue coaching and building kind of our own products. Officially, I'm an agile technical practices coach. So the unspoken detail here, because it's not normally professionally relevant, is I was on male at birth. And that adds a particular experience to the situations that I go into, especially as a coach. I think that our software industry is suffering a diversity crisis. We desperately need participation from new voices. And so built a couple of products over the past year, which has been a lot of fun. I've very much enjoyed it. I'm a long time hacker, programmer, and the like. So no matter how many labels we wear, some part of us will always be invisible behind those labels. Some of the labels are slapped onto us, some we choose to wear. We can wear them with shame. We can wear them like armor. We can wear them like a badge of honor. This is one of the labels that I proudly wear. This is from the Internet Engineering Task Force Request for Comments 1392, which is a big document, but defines hacker. So in the Agile community, the Agile software development community, we talk about, back in 2002, we talk about the Agile Manifesto. Why are we changing the way back in 2002 that we build software? And it all came about because, building software is hard. But the hardest part is working with people. And so, we favor individuals and interactions over processes and tools, and working software over comprehensive documentation, and collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. And feelings might play a part on the right-hand side of those statements, but really they play their biggest role on the left. So robots and zombies. So zombies, think about zombies for a minute, right? They're all instinct. They're all feelings. They don't really think, or do they? When you feel things, are you thinking? Well, they feel, and then they act. They don't really have much logic to them. Robots, on the other hand, they are all logic. And, from a very young age, science fiction fans like me were taught that we can make a robot explode by giving it a logic problem that it can't reason through. You may relate to this. Robots are all reasoning, ruthlessly computational. They compute and then act. Emotions do not compute. So, we're often reduced to logic. When I went through my transition, for example, I had friends that would try to reason me out of this path. And you can't really logic this, right? I think I can, my audience here can relate. This is something that we more feel. And so we have to give those feelings some legitimacy. A friend of mine likes to use a great metaphor here, because in software development, sometimes we get a little bit dehumanized. We become resources assigned to a project, and people are not resources. A log is a resource. A log will produce so much energy. If you cut the log in half, you will get two halves producing in total the same amount of energy. You can't do that to people. So we are humans. I can't say that without channeling Quark from Deep Space Nine. I am a geek. Here, we can do both. We can feel, and then we can think, and then we can act. And having this ability, this gives us special abilities. Courage is something that I think requires feeling and thinking, and is something that we can have. Thing about feelings, we are stuck with them. We cannot turn them off, despite what we tell ourselves, despite what society tells us, what our boss tells us, what our customers tell us. They are our superpower. So there's two ways we can ask a question, right? We can ask, how do you feel about this? And in software, we might talk about things here like code smells. I'm looking at this piece of code. Something about it is funny to me. I'm not sure what it is, but I feel it, right? And what do you think about this? A very different question. We can analyze the possibilities, do some logic. But we feel faster than we think. We're aware of our feelings a lot sooner than it takes us to reason through anything complicated, right? And this idea, I love this book. I've actually just started reading through it. I'm like halfway through. I've wanted to read it for years. It's this book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And the thing that really is poignant here for me is, if you think about trans folks who might lack what we'd call, say, passing privilege, or gender nonconforming, I don't like that word, gender creative folks or gender warriors, they know this a little too well, where people's system one, Daniel breaks things into system one and system two. So your system one faculties, those are the emotional feelings and pattern matching, and they make snap decisions based on prior experience and any like preliminary input, which might get wrong, right? So you're in a situation, somebody looks at you, they make a snap decision, they get misgendered, and then, right, what we hope happens is their system two picks up, which is that reasoning system that can work through and work through that logic. And it's like, oh, wait, sorry. And then carry on. Some people have a stronger system one than system two. I think in my experience, I wish more people would exercise their system two. But we all have these two sort of ways of thinking. And this is very much I forget the two terms. They're on my slide notes. And they're not. Okay, never mind. So one thing that I am always bringing to teams is, they need to have permission to feel. They can't allow themselves to be reduced to these purely logical beings. It doesn't make sense. Imagine, shutting off half of your faculties when you're coming to solve a hard problem or deal with a difficult situation. You can't do that. You don't want to do that. You have to give yourself permission to feel. And so we feel awkward, Feelings are sometimes dismissed as, flighty or unsubstantial. But it's our experiences that drive these feelings, and our experiences are legitimate. We have to acknowledge that. And so, but sometimes they drive us to places we don't want to go, and quickly, because your system one works fast, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to take you here. I'm uncomfortable. And they can show vulnerabilities. They linger, right? So feelings carry from situation to situation. You can walk out of one situation into another situation and still be feeling those feelings. That's something to be aware of, you know. And finally, how does this relate to your ability when you're writing software? What do feelings do for you as a software developer? And I believe this is where the idea of kata really comes to play. So kata is when you're coding, you practice. You jump into a situation with a problem that you've maybe solved a dozen times or 100 times before, and you give it a shot, and you try something new, and you throw it out because you didn't like the way it was going, and you try again differently next week or tomorrow. You want to be aware of the anchoring effect. Things like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's kind of silly. Science says that's not true. We can always build new pathways in the brain and do new things. But over time, these kata, they develop and reinforce your system one. They help to build these feelings that you have for the code that you're seeing, and that will do you a ton of good in your professional career. And the last thing is, when you're doing this practice, I like the expression, perfect practice makes perfect. So practice slowly, intentionally. Do your work with care. Don't be so concerned when you're practicing with the finish. Be concerned with the journey, because the journey is really where you learn how to be a better coder. So that was huge and compressed. Does anybody have any questions? Excellent.